So, up. Hello, everyone. My name is Andrea Thanis. I'm an advisor to IUCN's Gender Equality for Climate Change Opportunities Initiative, and I'll be your host for the webinar this afternoon or this morning, depending on what time zone you're in. I'd like to welcome you to this 12th in a series of webinars hosted by GECO. This webinar is focused on innovative financing and what it's going to take to unlock women's entrepreneurship in the energy sector. We're very excited about this webinar. It's the second of the series, the finance question, and how we can get more financial resources into women and men who are taking a gender-sensitive approach to renewable energy technology and entrepreneurship in the sector. We're hosting this webinar in part because we recognize that women face different and sometimes bigger challenges than men in terms of how assets are acquired and whether their entrepreneurship is supported financially. And the barriers can vary between social and cultural to very significant barriers in terms of asset ownership or basic financial requirements. And yet women provide a significant amount of entrepreneurship in the sector, in the renewable energy sector, and more generally, and can be very important drivers for transitions to systems of energy that are more sustainable and renewable. And so we want to find ways of unlocking that finance challenge for women through two key strategies. One, ensuring that women are empowered to design and implement renewable energy finance decisions, and a second, to look at how renewable energy financing systems are being designed and whether they're explicitly considering women's empowerment and needs in the context of their work. As I say, this is the 12th in a series of webinars that GECO is hosting. GECO is a 5-year program that's been launched by USAID and IUCN in 2014 with the overall goal of leveraging advancements in women's entrepreneurship and gender equity through and for the benefit of climate change and development outcomes. This series of webinars is intended to increase knowledge and improve and sensitize stakeholders to the role that women and men both play in energy and mitigation sectors, and to deepening our understanding of the social and financial benefits that face women in the sector. We're very fortunate to be joined by a panel of very experienced and hands-on speakers who will in part be tag teaming on presentations looking at women entrepreneurs and their needs specifically, and how to unlock finance for women entrepreneurs explicitly, bridging finance and women's needs in the context of Senegal and work in the sector in Africa, and then also on consumer power and the role that women can play in really taking decisions into their own hands through some innovative approaches using information technology. The format for the session is that we'll ask each of the panelists to present to you, and then we'll take questions at the end, or pose questions to the panelists at the end of the session. You will be able to present your questions to the panelists through the chat function, which is on the right-hand side of the GoToWebinar bar. And we do encourage you to post those questions as they arise for you in the course of the presentations, so that we can compile them and present them to the presenters at the end of the series of presentations. We will ask, because we do have a number of registered participants, we will ask that you all keep mute during the webinar so that we can avoid disturbances while the presenters are presenting. But do encourage you to use that chat function. So stay mute orally, but please do use the written chat function to present your questions. Maria Preble, who's online here as well, will be supporting us with technical aspects of the webinar. If you do have issues with the technical aspects, please do reach out to her and pose those questions, and she should be able to help you solve them. There are handouts that are available also on the right-hand side of the screen. So if you want further information, that will be available there. And we are recording this webinar, and the presentations together with the recording will be available afterwards on our green platform. So you will be able to reference it in the future and share it with others who you would like to find out more or share information. With that, I'd like to move forward to the first of our presentations on women entrepreneurs. We are privileged to be joined by Rebecca Fries and Stephanie Finnegan, who will jointly present on their work with Value for Women, which is a group that is working to support women across a number of sectors in the women entrepreneurs and across a number of sectors. Rebecca is the managing director and co-founder of Value for Women, and she leads the organization in advocating for creating opportunities for women's economic inclusion, leadership, and entrepreneurship around the globe, and comes to us with a background in working with women entrepreneurs, with ecosystem actors in the banks and banking agencies, as well as authored a number of key publications in the sector. Stephanie Finnegan is the gender and social inclusion specialist in the business program for Value for Women, and specializes in project design and management and evaluation and research for gender inclusiveness programs and business development. She's got a great deal of technical expertise and has lived and worked in Cambodia, Rwanda, Uganda, Haiti, Iraq, and Afghanistan. So loads of experience from all around the world. With that, Stephanie and Rebecca, I'd welcome you to present more about Value for Women and give us your overview of what women in the women entrepreneurs in the sector need.
Thank you so much, Andrea, and also to Maria and your other colleagues for the invitation to participate in the call today. It's our pleasure to be here. So this is Rebecca Fries, Managing Director of Value for Women, and I'm joined by my colleague Stephanie Finnegan. We're going to go back and forth a little bit on our presentation, and I'll kick us off by just giving a very broad overview of what we will speak about today. So firstly, we'll tell you a very little bit about Value for Women and what we do. Then we'll talk a little bit, I'm actually turn it over to Stephanie to talk a little bit about the business case for including women, just to touch on that briefly, as well as looking specifically at the finance gap and defining the opportunity for including women entrepreneurs in the sector. And then I'll pick it back up and speak a little bit to the barriers that women face. And we're going to look at the barriers from two points of view, particularly from the supply side and then from the demand side. So the supply side referring to what service and product providers are doing and not doing to include women entrepreneurs. And then also looking at the demand side, what women face as barriers themselves in entrepreneurship to starting and growing businesses. And with that, focusing on how we can tap into specific opportunities to include women entrepreneurs. And finally, we'll wrap it up with giving a few examples of what's being done and what can be done. And we'll draw from some of the examples of our work, which is what we know best, and also mention work of some of our partners. So that's what Stephanie and I will walk through on our time. So maybe just flipping to who we are. Value for Women is a small social enterprise based in the UK. We do work globally across the Americas region, Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. And our essence is to do practical, hands-on research and development that really results in training and capacity development programs that bridge gender and entrepreneurship, or gender and business development in the SME sector specifically. We design tools for looking at gender inclusion within those areas. And again, we excuse me, we work on the supply side, so helping other excuse me, service providers and including financial institutions, impact investors, nonprofit organizations, capacity development organizations, and others, really think about their offer and their business model and their value chains, and help them think through how and where gender can be included in a way that makes business sense for those organizations. And then on the flip side, we do work on the demand side to create capacity development programs, tools, and methodologies that support women specifically in becoming entrepreneurs and starting and growing their business, and also in increasing their participation in value chains. Some of our partners, current partners, include the Shell Foundation, and this is an interesting initiative which we'll come back to a little later perhaps, but looking at designing benchmarks and tools for SMEs to foster gender inclusion across their business operations. And other partners we have are listed there. We also have been working for about 4 years with the Global Alliance for Clean Cook Stoves, doing gender capacity development, again, in clean energy SMEs, primarily in Africa. So those are, I guess, two of extremely relevant partners for this particular call. We do work across sectors. As Andrea mentioned, we work in agriculture as well as clean energy, and sort of the SME sector broadly as well. You can also check out our webpage to see any publications. We do offer a lot of publications and articles related to some of the topics we're going to touch on today, so we would invite you all to have a look as well if there's something you think might be useful for your work. So with that, I'll turn it over to Stephanie to talk a bit more about the business case.
Great, thank you, Rebecca, and thank you to everyone on the call. I'm going to speak at a very high level just about the business case for gender inclusion and what we've been finding in our research. And this is for the argument here, and the business case here is being made across the board, encompassing the gender sector, the private sector globally, but is also inclusive of the energy sector. So what we know is that recently there's been a greater emphasis globally on issues facing women across the private sector, including the energy field. And this increased emphasis and public discussion has led to an increase in research and data and publications supporting the business case for gender inclusion. So just a few statistics to paint the broad picture here, but to emphasize this. We know that there's been studies that have found that $28 trillion of growth opportunity in the global economy by 2025 exists if gender gaps were to be eliminated in the participation by women in the formal labor market. So essentially, if women were able to tap into the entire opportunity they have to participate in the formal labor market, globally speaking, this would be the growth opportunity by 2025. Other studies that we've been looking at more recently have looked at the business case for female representation on boards. And what we found is that there's a strong correlation between organizations that have more female representation on their boards and better performance in different areas such as net profit margins, overall equity, and earnings per share. So there's definitely an increasing amount of data that does point to a strong financial reason why it would be advantageous for businesses to have increased female representation on their corporate boards. And then additionally, we found that there's plenty of data pointing to the fact that gender diverse companies actually do outperform at a high level. They outperform companies that have male-only leadership in a variety of areas, including employee productivity, innovation, customer acquisition and retention, as well as talent recruitment and retention. So there are a number of advantages for companies that are more gender diverse, as particularly in terms of their leadership. And moving on, despite the fact that there are these increasing data points pointing to the business case for gender inclusion, we also know that there remains a significant finance gap particularly for women entrepreneurs and women-led SMEs. But we look at that finance gap as also, of course, an opportunity. And so just to pull out a few statistics around this, again at a high level, but we know that women-owned SMEs, according to the IFC, a recent study showed that 70% of women-owned SMEs in the formal sector in developing countries are either unserved or underserved by financial institutions, and that leads to a finance gap of around $285 billion. And an additional survey by the IFC of 25 countries looked at the SME landscape there and found that while 35% of the SMEs in these countries were led by women, only 16 to 18% of the lending to SMEs was lending that was done to women. So again, we see a significant gap there in terms of the number of women who are leading businesses versus the number of women who are able to get access to financing for those businesses. And then also we've also done some looking at women as energy consumers as well, and the financing gap there. And what we know at a very broad level is that in developing economies, men are typically the purchasers of and the buyers of an energy product, but women largely, particularly when we're talking about household products, are largely the consumer or the end user. And so what we found is that there's evidence that points to the fact that if there were to be financing mechanisms developed that would make it easier for women to actually afford energy products, then there would be an increase in women who are able to actually be the buyer and the decision maker when it comes to purchasing those products. So different mechanisms could include group loans, various different opportunities for repayment structures, revolving loans, or monthly repayment installments are all ideas that that could be put to use to increase the number of women who are actually the purchasers of energy products. So those are just a few of the high-level research and data points that we've been finding lately. I'll turn it back over to Rebecca to speak more specifically about the supply side and the demand side barriers and opportunities.
Thanks so much, Steph. Great. So looking sort of at some of the barriers and opportunities for supporting women entrepreneurs specifically, again, our perspective on this is looking at both the supply and the demand side. So I'm just going to sort of scratch the surface on this one a little bit and really drawing from several different research projects that we've undertaken in Latin America, Asia, and Africa. So on the supply side, as Stephanie was starting to outline the sort of financing gap that exists, and we know that SME financing in particular can be very limited in some contexts. So we often hear, that women are kind of the most missing of the missing middle in that kind of financing segment, and are sort of getting access to even less SME financing compared to their male counterparts. for a variety of reasons. And so knowing that kind of that gap exists, there also represents clearly a very important and key opportunity, sort of for the SME sector as a whole, but also looking at women within that segment. We have seen that there are a significant number of women entrepreneurs in the SME segment, but not those that are accessing that type of financing. And then clearly, the microfinance sector has been a vehicle for women accessing finance at the micro enterprise level, but certainly there's a very clear kind of ceiling there, and also all sorts of restrictions around interest rates and things like that. So on the supply side, creating sort of new mechanisms and vehicles for providing appropriate finance is a really interesting opportunity, and also kind of related to that, really understanding the women market in the context where financial service providers, for example, are providing products and services, and really understanding the specific needs to be able to provide appropriate and even tailored financing for that's accessible for women. And related to that as well is women often, networks that exist, business networks in particular, are often very difficult for women to penetrate and participate in. And this has to do with cultural and social aspects, but also, sort of in the network side of things, and those networks often not being very inclusive, or, for example, kind of having business networking opportunities at specific times where often women's care responsibilities, for example, conflict with those times. And you see this often in sort of happy hour type networking events where women are often excluded from. And it's interesting to sort of think about how business networks are, and sort of those informal partnerships and relationships being developed, really have an impact on growth for SMEs in particular. I'm going to run really quickly through, I see I only have like 2 minutes left, so I'm going to run really quickly through the rest. Also, we see that gender neutral marketing misses women. Often financial institutions believe that if they're not discriminating, then their products and services are available to both women and men. But what we've seen also is that if there isn't a specific kind of gender lens or gender focus in marketing, women are just missed. So without understanding, again, the population and the needs, that's a missed opportunity. And we often hear about unconscious bias, which is something that can be unintended, but on the part of financial institutions or loan providers, we hear a lot that women are asked, well, who pays the bills in your house, or where's your husband or partner, in order to kind of, or during the loan application process. And so we see that unconscious bias is cultural and social. It sort of underlies often underlies the kind of financial decision making around who gets access to loans. And on the demand side, the women are often not aware of the different types of financing that exists for them to start and grow their business, and what the most appropriate type is for their business stage. So really that lack of awareness of what exists and how these different mechanisms would benefit. So if we're talking about loans, equity, etc. And then also there's the topic of leadership, confidence, and networks. We see that women often have less confidence and self-esteem, and working on developing those skills, those leadership skills, communication skills, negotiation skills, really is a key thing to have women believe in themselves that they can grow and start a business. In addition, there's, on the demand side as well, a big barrier for women is the time spent on care activities, on household responsibilities, which clearly limits the amount of time that they can invest in starting and growing a business as well. So very quickly, some of the things that are being done, and what what can, I guess, continue to be built into the opportunity side. For supply, Value for Women has been doing gender sensitivity trainings with banks, with the idea to help banks understand how to eliminate bottlenecks and develop new approaches. Not entirely creating new products necessarily, but just really understanding how their existing products and services reach women and men differently, and help kind of think through how to improve that and remove any bottlenecks. Secondly, we're doing some research, for example, in Mexico on the impact of psychometric testing as a way to get around asset requirements for loans. So that's something that's been created by the Entrepreneurial Finance Lab, and there are other kind of versions of psychometric testing being rolled out around the globe to look at that as an alternative to credit history and things like that, which also might be a particular barrier for women, particularly. And on the demand side, we've also been working a lot to create an ecosystem of support. So I guess one of the key takeaways we'd love for people to have at the end of our presentation is that really successful women entrepreneurs need access to financing, but their needs also go beyond financing. And really, it is important for an ecosystem to be working around women entrepreneurs to provide a holistic types of support that include financing, mentoring, coaching, access to business skills, but also the soft skills that women need, the leadership that training that women need to become successful entrepreneurs. And then obviously there's a big opportunity to also work on care and redistribution of care activities in the home, in some contexts where that's appropriate, and to try out new ways to do that. We've been working with Oxfam Oxfam America in Guatemala, for example, on an investment program for women entrepreneurs that includes training of financial institutions, and also working with male partners of women entrepreneurs to generate buy-in and to get them excited about the women's entrepreneurship, and to sort of minimize any potential resistance that could come up. And so really engaging male partners in the family is also another way. And then finally, also really continuing to make the business case. I think it's something we recognize that there are several different types of business cases that can be made for women's entrepreneurship, and really at the end of the day, that becomes a powerful way to encourage others to seek ways to tap into supporting women entrepreneurs. So I am over time, so I'm going to stop there. But thank you all for listening to us, and I'll pass it back over to Andrea.
Hi, thanks. Thank you very much, Stephanie and Rebecca, for a really great overview of the challenges that women face in the energy and market and beyond, and some of the systemic issues and what can be done about them. That fantastic opportunity, $28 trillion by 2025. Now that's a number to really hold on to. And really, yes, speaking to the ecosystem of support that's needed beyond just finance, but also business skills, leadership, care activities, etc. Being a woman working in a context of an environment that benefits from a lot of that care support, I know the value of that firsthand. I'm going to move now to, so first, before I move actually, we haven't had many questions coming in over the chat function. I would encourage you, as you think of questions, to pop them into that chat box so that we can collect them and prepare the speakers for responses at the end of all of the presentations. So please do get your questions into the chat box. And now we have the privilege of moving through to an Africa example of where a team is really working hard to overcome some of the systemic barriers that that Rebecca and Stephanie have identified, and finding solutions in the context of Senegal. Abdou Dousso is a specialist in economics and finance. Bonjour, Abdul. Si tu as besoin, je peux t'aider en français aussi, si c'est nécessaire. And he's joined by Nathalie Rami, who's based in Nairobi and is the program director for Energy for Impact, which Abdul is also working for, which is a business solutions or approaches oriented group trying to find business approaches to off-grid energy on the continent of Africa through tailored strategies that support SMEs on technology, skills, and capital and delivery. So with that, I really look forward to hearing how you're working in Senegal and how you're working specifically with the banking sector to really encourage women entrepreneurs in West Africa to start creating that 28 billion.
Hello everyone. So I will be taking you through our presentation. My name is Natalie and I work for Energy for Impact and I'm based in Nairobi. My colleague Duso should be online, but his connection is quite bad, so I'll probably be doing most of the talking. So I'm hoping everybody can see my screen. So I'm going to be using a Prezi to do this presentation. We're going to be speaking mainly about what we were doing at the moment in Senegal, which is a project that is aiming at empowering women in rural areas to deliver access to energy to the unserved. And that is a 3-year program which is funded by Energia and has been going on now for 2.5 years, so we're coming to the end of it. But before we take you through that, I am going to quickly present who we are. So we are a British NGO with a headquarters in London, and we operate in Africa, in 5 countries exactly. We have a headcount of about 100 people at the moment. And what we do is support micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises by providing them a holistic package of support so that they can grow, expand, and deliver access to energy in rural and peri-urban areas. We have been on the ground for about 10 years now. We used to be known as GVEP International, Global Village Energy Partnership, but we have recently changed name to Energy for Impact. So over the 10 years, we have supported about 3,000 something businesses that have provided improved access to energy to about 14 million people across 5 countries in Africa. And the growth of those enterprises have also enabled to create about 8,000 jobs and avoided about 12 million tons of CO2. Part of what we do with those enterprises as well is help them raise capital so that they can expand and grow. And over the 10 years, we have raised about 111 million capital to support them. So that's a quick summary of who we are. Now I'm going to move back to our program in Senegal and the case study that we would like to present today. What I'm going to do is mainly provide first the achievement of the project so far, then speak a bit about the business model, the financial mechanism that we've put in place to help these micro enterprises led by women to access finance, and then speak a bit about the challenges and the recommendation that we would like to make. So in terms of achievements, at the moment we are supporting about 151 businesses that are led by women. Most of them are women groups, and they are quite informal groups. Out of those, about 96 groups are in the are retailing basically solar products and improved food stoves, and another 55 of them are being supported by the program in productive use of energy. The work we've been doing with them in the past 3 years has led to about 36,000 people with improved access in the region of Tambacounda, and that also has benefited about 7,000 women with improved and new economic generating activities. How we have done that? Well, we are using a business model which believes that small and medium-sized enterprises can actually become performing businesses if they are provided with the right support. And therefore, we provide them with various advice and technical support, which include business and technical mentoring. We help them also raise capital or access loans and credit. We connect them throughout the value chain, and we also help them stimulate and create demand for the product. So we kind of, when we start working with them, we do an assessment of their needs and what is the type of support that they would require to grow. And based on that, we will provide a tailored package of intervention to help them to grow. We do not only work with women in general in our organization, but the program we have in Senegal is specifically focused on supporting women-led enterprises. And the ultimate objective is also to try and create evidence on the ground that by providing the right support to women enterprises, we can accelerate the delivery of energy access in rural areas. So that is a program that is done in parallel with an advocacy program where we use the evidence-based and the evidence put on the ground to advocate for the need of more focused gender policies and program and supporting the local government to promote women leadership in enterprises. To come back more specifically to our work in Senegal, so after having selected these 151 women groups and supporting them and holding their hand for a year or something, we have also realized that in order for us to make sure that these women are integrated throughout the value chain and actually can grow and expand, we need to create various partnerships on the ground. And so we have worked and created partnership with various actors. Some are suppliers of solar products or of improved cook stoves. Some are financial institutions, and some are governmental initiatives and agencies. So one of the main barriers that the women that we work with encounter is actually access to finance, and that is due to the fact that very often there are informal groups. They have never accessed finance before. They lack any business skills to be able to create any business plans. They don't even know where to go to access finance. So we really needed to kind of try and put together some mechanisms to facilitate that. So what we, the way we've done it is that we first started to build their capacity to create like a strong pipeline of women enterprises. And then we we mentor them for a few months. We help them put together a business plan so that could be presented to financial institutions. And we also created in parallel to that partnership with the right suppliers and the right financial institution. So just before maybe I go through the different challenges, I wanted to take you through the financial mechanism that we have put in place when it comes to supporting these women to access finance. So some of the women that we work with, specifically in productive use of energy, needed to access quite a big amount of money to be able to acquire the equipment they need to increase their productivity. So here we are taking the example of women trying to acquire solar fridges so that they can cool product and provide fresh product in their communities. In this case, we decided to select macro-financial institution which also had a similar objective as ours, which is to support minority groups to access finance. And they also had an environmental and social impact objective in their guidelines. And that macro-financial institution is called Korean Microfinance, and they are supported by a big institution called Finnegan, who has injected within Korea a line of credit, especially to support minority groups such as women. We have set up an MOU with Korean Microfinance, where we propose to them our services, which are to provide them with a good pipeline of women clients who are in need of accessing credit. And we would support these women to build a business plan that is satisfying to Korean Microfinance. We would link those women to the energy supplier, and this is in the graph that you see is Ball Energy. So that the suppliers come on the ground, do a technical assessment of the need of the women, and propose a product that would help them increase their productivity. Based on that, we put together the business plan, we present it to Korean Microfinance, and they do their own due diligence and they approve it or not. Once they approve it, these women are not able, obviously, to bring in a lot of upfront costs of the equipment, and the supplier needs a certain amount of money to be able to actually deliver the product, especially if he's selling it on credit. So Korean Microfinance will pay the supplier 75% of the cost of the equipment directly, and the women group only have 25% that they need to pay directly to the supplier. Some of the women group have managed to actually, because they are a group, to save some money and bring in some upfront cost, up to sometimes 25% of the cost of the equipment. And the rest of the amount that they have to pay in credit, they have about 30 months to repay it. And the cost of the equipment is about $3,000. And the profit they're making at the moment through this equipment, the net profit is about $100 a month. And so this is the way the financial mechanism works. So the MFI provide directly the 75% of the cost to the supplier, and they will repay that over 30 months. In case of default, then what happens is that the MFI can take back the equipment from the woman and resell it at its net value at the time. So that is the first mechanism that we've put in place with Korean Microfinance to support these women in productive uses. And also the role we play in this is that we ensure that women are repaying on time. We have mentors on the ground that are supporting the women, are following up on the repayment, and they're also helping them to increase their sales and finding new routes to market for them to ensure that they're making enough profit to be able to repay each month. Now, the second financial mechanism that we've put in place is for the solar lamps and the improved cook stoves. So the graph you've got in front of you is explaining the mechanism for the solar lamps. So in that case, we have entered into a partnership with Awongo Solar Products, which is managed by Total. And again, Total had an objective of trying to deploy solar lamps in rural areas to reach out to the unserved people. And they were having a lot of difficulties in actually setting up a distribution chain to reach out to remote rural areas. So we proposed to Total to create this distribution chain for them by empowering groups of women to retail the product in rural areas. And the agreement is based on women placing orders at Total, and for the order to be delivered, they need to provide about 25% cash of the value of the order. Once they provide that, then the products are delivered to the women who retail them in rural areas. However, the suppliers needed some guarantee from the women. These are informal groups; they had no guarantee that they will be able to repay. So we have set up on the side a loan guarantee fund that we use to guarantee the value of the product that are provided on credit to women. Women then have about 60 days to repay, and they can also sell on credit to the end users who would have 45 days to pay. In order to minimize the risk, they can only sell to end users which are known to the women and are known by the communities. So this is the mechanism we've put in place for the solar lamps. And then for the improved cook stoves, we've got kind of a very similar mechanism, which I've not described here because it's very similar to that. The only difference on that case is that those manufacturers of improved cook stoves are very small manufacturers. They were not able to satisfy the demand if they only received 25% upfront. So they need 50% upfront. Again, the women could not provide 50% upfront. So we agreed that the women would be providing only 25%, and we as an organization would bring in the other 25%, so that the supplier can get his 50% upfront cost and deliver the product, and then the women will be able to repay over 60 days again the remaining amount to the supplier. However, the woman in that case is not aware that Energy for Impact is providing the other 25% in order to avoid women not repaying. So they are, they are basically repaying 75% of the cost of the product, but 25% of these goes back to Energy for Impact Fund, and the other goes to the supplier.
Natalie?
Yes?
Sorry, I'm just going to come in. Fascinating examples, really amazing work that you've been doing in very specific solutions. Can you kind of wrap up in the next few minutes, and so we can complete the round of presentations, though?
Yeah, sure. Well, actually, I'm coming to the end of the presentation. I think we kind of went through the different challenges so far. I'm going to just go through the recommendation, which kind of summarize a bit what we think should be we should try and do going forward to address these challenges. So I think the upfront cost for women has been a big challenge. Even 35% upfront has been a challenge. So going forward, we're trying to find new ways to overcome this by piloting pay-as-you-go products. This is what we're trying to do in the next phase of that program. There is also a need to familiarize MFIs with the energy sector and help them to put together financial products that are tailored and adapted to the needs of the women. We also need to think about the suppliers' need in terms of working capital. If we want them to sell on credit to women, they very often have a challenge in terms of working capital facilities. So this is also something that we're thinking about. And the other thing that is very important, I think, is to make sure that we work with the right financial, macro-financial institution that have in place also some social and environmental impact objective, and that makes the partnership much easier. So basically, that's about it. So I'll give back the speakers to Andrea.
Great, thank you very much, Natalie. And to do so as well, I realize a lot of this work is your work, and really fabulous that that the progress that you've made in this field in creating solutions, practical solutions for women in finance. In fact, you ended there with a note on kind of the need to come up with some solutions to the barriers of upfront cost, and looking to pay-as-you-go systems. Our next speaker, Anya Chernev, is the co-founder and executive director of Empower Generation, which is a social enterprise connecting women in Nepal with global suppliers of solar technology, and then empowering them to distribute clean energy solutions in their remote communities. And in fact, Anya has herself been working with some kind of innovative solutions on leveraging mobile money and in a pay-as-you-go system in the context of her work in Nepal. So we're looking forward to hearing from you, Anya.
Great, thanks everybody, and I will try to keep this short since I'm the last presenter, and we can move on to questions. I really appreciate the presentations from the other two organizations. I think a lot of the challenges that they identified are very similar to what my organization faces, and I'll just give a little brief introduction about our organization. So I am the co-founder and executive director of an organization, a social enterprise called Empower Generation. And we identify, train, and support rural women living in Nepal to become clean energy distribution entrepreneurs. These women own their own companies, selling a range of products from solar lanterns, improved cook stoves, water filters, and solar home systems, as well as a few women's health and feminine hygiene products. And they manage a village level sales force that goes door to door, making sales of between 5 and 15 sales agents active per business. We currently support 20 women-led enterprises across the country of Nepal, and they manage a village level sales force of just over 200 sales agents. And collectively, this distribution network to date has sold over 56,000 clean energy products in their local communities. The majority of these products have been sold on directly without credit, and that's mostly Pico or smaller products. And as we are moving into larger home systems, we are trying to offer innovative financing for our customers. So just a quick overview of our program as a case study. You'll see in this slide, this is one of our entrepreneurs. Her name is Runa. When she started working with us, she was spending up to 20% of her income on kerosene and candles. And as you can see in that picture, it's pretty inadequate for her children who are trying to study around a small candle. She heard about our program from a promotional program that our staff put on, and bought a solar lamp to help her her own family. And this is how many of our entrepreneurs come to us and become entrepreneurs, is that they are customers first. They see the benefits of the products that are distributed. They start working as a sales agent, and then they decide to scale up their business. So we find that one of the challenges that was identified in the first presentation, that women are not the customers, is not the case for us in Nepal. A lot of women, we do a lot of women-specific marketing and branding, and pitch to women's savings and credit cooperatives and women's community groups to ensure that women are the first customers. We also use like a women selling to women approach, which we found is the most effective marketing approach, because women are the household energy managers in Nepal, and they stand to gain the most from the transition to clean energy. As I said, as the products move up in price, they greatly improve customers' quality of life as well as quality of service. And the range of products that we sell is as small as around $10 or $15 for a solar lantern, up to $360 for a full-fledged solar home system, which has enough power to charge a television and a fan. And comes with USB chargers as well. You can charge a small tablet. So we found our biggest challenges are not so much the technology, but figuring out how to most appropriately distribute products that actually can reach the most remote areas, and the payment collection from remote customers. As everybody else mentioned, access to credit is a big barrier for a lot of customers, especially on the higher end of these products, to be able to afford these types of products. And in order for us to provide these products on credit, we have decided to launch a pilot for pay-as-you-go options for the solar home systems. Like I said, we found that women are the key to our last mile distribution network, because they are the household energy managers, and this woman selling to women approach has been quite effective in terms of marketing. So for a little bit about the innovative payment structures that we're trying to pilot, this year we are partnering with a few different mobile money companies in Nepal. Mobile money is not very prevalent as it is in many countries in Africa, in Nepal, but cell phone coverage is incredible. There's a penetration rate of over 100%. And so we're hoping that by partnering with mobile money companies, solar provision and solar home system and solar power can be seen as kind of a killer app for mobile money to both widen the breadth and the use of mobile money. So the way that we're partnering with mobile money is that we are turning each one of our sales agents into mobile money agents as well. They become cash collection points for customers who are leasing a pay-as-you-go solar home system on a 3 to 6 month repayment plan. So they pay agents month after month in cash, and the agents then use mobile money to transfer the funds back to Empower Generation. We are in our next phase after we have our agents comfortable with mobile money. We're looking to also sign customers up to be have mobile money accounts, and then we're hoping that they can then use those mobile money accounts to be more financially accessible and use them to pay school fees and other types of utilities and monthly payments to spread and proliferate mobile money throughout the country. So our model is really based on this women selling to women approach, and one of our key differentiators and key missions for us is that we ensure that each woman is her own entrepreneur and she owns her own company rather than just working within our network as an agent. So we find that that helps our network spread in a more targeted manner and in a more dedicated manner. So we're hoping that as we're rolling out the pay-as-you-go systems, we'll see that Empower Generation agents are marketing solar with these pay-as-you-go contracts. We found that this provides customers enough access to credit that they need to purchase this larger technology system, move up the energy ladder. Customers can pay in low monthly installments, and the systems are also remote monitored and controlled so that we can monitor usage and adapt our offering, as well as gather data in terms of use and provide some insights into this to the suppliers that we're working with on what people are using these for. So as I said, we're launching this pilot this year. Our first orders, we're currently signing up customers right now, and our first order of pay-as-you-go solar home systems is in transit, and we hope to receive it by the beginning of May. So we're looking forward to see how that goes. Some of the challenges, the biggest challenges for us with accessing financing, both for women as customers and for women as entrepreneurs, is access to working capital for these pay-as-you-go home systems. We're really looking for like third-party financing to take over the PPA contract from Empower Generation, as well as providing women, as was mentioned in the other two presentations, working capital so that they can continue to scale their businesses. So I will leave it at that because I know we're a little bit over time. Thank you guys, and I look forward to your questions.
Fabulous. Thank you very much, Anya. That's a really exciting model and one that is familiar to some of us who've been working in Africa, to the solar system model that is unfolding in Uganda and Tanzania and Ethiopia and across different parts of that continent. So really nice to see mobile money coming into the Asian networks as well, as you say, kind of a different starting point, and really exciting to hear how women entrepreneurs cross across different sectors. I mean, of course, once a woman kind of is bit by the bug of entrepreneurship, I think they tend to thrive. At least someone like Hilaria comes to mind, who's a solar sister that recently took part in the C for All meetings in New York, but previous to that was part of a network of basket weavers that was supported by the African Wildlife Foundation in northern Kenya, and kind of cut her teeth in the basket weaving entrepreneurship end of things. So she's really thrived in the energy sector as a result of that. So we're going to turn now to a series of questions. We've had many questions coming in for the different presenters, and I'll try to group those so that we can address them. I would encourage you to continue to pose questions, and we can work through them as quickly as we can, or as well as we can. The overall framing questions are right now before you on the screen, but really for you, Rebecca and Stephanie, a couple of questions coming in around your mentorship model for creating that ecosystem of support for women entrepreneurs, and a challenge in some way in terms of, well, so the first question is, how are you mentoring them? And then the second question is, well, if women are bringing new skill sets to the business community, and we're then mentoring them on business skills according to the traditional model of business, is that the right thing to be doing, or should we be pushing for a more women-centered model of entrepreneurship, and leaving women to really strive and thrive, bringing what they do to the table?
Thanks so much for the question. This is Rebecca. I think it's a very complex and interesting question. I can speak a little bit to the mentoring and coaching piece, and just this kind of idea of holistic support first. And so our work has focused on sort of creating tailored mentoring and coaching methodologies, again, with this very holistic perspective. And so that has, for example, in the program I mentioned with Oxfam America and Guatemala, in the Women in Small Investment Program, or WISE, we've designed a coaching methodology that really draws, again, a series of different types of supports that women need. And so to be more specific, that coaching methodology is designed to highlight business skills support, but also leadership and soft skills. And another really important component, and I think this has been implicit in a lot of the presentations today, is the need to create peer spaces for women to sort of discuss and talk about some of the specific challenges that they're facing as they do their entrepreneurship activities. And so that can include some challenges that they might face in the home, and sort of really to create a space for women to talk to one another about what they're doing, and also the opportunity for women to work together in networks for entrepreneurship, and this idea of doing collective entrepreneurship, or playing a different role in part of the same value chain. So one woman providing supplies to another, et cetera, and sort of trying to through those peer-to-peer networks that on one hand provide psychosocial supports and just peer moral support, which is really important, but also fostering kind of new business relationships based on solidarity and equality and I guess alternative values from what we usually see kind of broadly in the business sector. So I'll stop there. I don't want to take up too much time of the Q&A.
So effectively mentoring women in a way that builds on and builds the power base of women's skill sets within the business community. Is that what I understand?
Yeah, and focusing on the business skill side of things. So really understanding and supporting the development of building a business financial model, understanding accounting, accessing new markets, market segmentation. So sort of the technical pieces of the business, but coupled by the leadership and building the soft skills and confidence, the ability to pitch, the ability to communicate effectively with, on one hand, like suppliers, buyers, customers, et cetera, but on the other hand, also those skills translate to the household and sort of have a dual impact. So if coaches and coaching kind of methodologies and things like that include this leadership and confidence factor, effective communication and negotiation, those really can be applied across the board within the business, but also in other relationships, and might be able to be used to help free up time, for example, in care activities. So really kind of focusing on a coaching or mentoring approach that kind of adopts those or focuses on both the business side as well as the soft skills side. Great,
thanks. Natalie and Abdul, I have 3 questions for you. The first is really, is finance access the biggest obstacle that the women that you're working with face? And then a couple of questions that are sort of about the specifics. One around the 60-day repayment time frame. Is that too compressed, and why not longer? How did you choose 60 days? And also, how do you deal with maintenance? Is it the responsibility of the end buyer, or is it something that comes from an agreement with the supplier?
Thank you. So for the first question, yes, I mean, access to finance is a huge issue. Of course, it doesn't come alone. The lack of, business skills is also a problem. But we've noticed that really the access to finance has been the main need that women have raised to us. So as I said initially, we do a need assessment with the women, and it's based on what they're telling us, and what was the need in terms of support to grow, that we provided that support. And access to finance has been a huge problem. To the point where actually even asking them to bring 25% upfront has been too much, because we're talking about really informal, really poor groups in rural areas. So we even had to negotiate back with the supplier to reduce that to a lower percentage. And for the 60 days repayment, yes, it's actually quite tight. That's right. And that is also something that we had to, again, revisit with the supplier. The reason why we have had 60 days was a negotiation together between, the focal point representing the women, the suppliers and ourselves, and we agreed on 60 days, which was the maximum the supplier was ready to allow. But we have noticed that that has been also a problem for women. They had challenges sometimes to repay within the 60 days, and because of that, they were, they tended to do lower orders to the supplier because they were afraid not to be able to repay everything if the order was too big. So that is also something that today we're again revisiting with the supplier. What was the third question? Oh, the maintenance. So with regard to the maintenance, yeah, so well, for solar lamps, we the product is guaranteed for 2 years, and they are the women entrepreneurs, if there's a problem, the end user bring back the lamp and they can get it renewed by the supplier directly. So there's a warranty for that. When it comes to different type of equipment like the solar fridges, again there's a warranty, and the supplier itself is involved into ensuring as well, because it's in his interest as well that the fridge continue to work so that the women can repay the credit. So there is regular visits from the supplier to ensure that there's no issue, and we have also our own staff on the ground who are supporting the women. So yeah, so I hope that's answered the question.
Great, yeah, thank you, Natalie. So essentially, I'm hearing a need to educate suppliers as well and bring women's perspectives into supplier frameworks and advocate for women, for needs of women in the context of supplier, and find those business cases for why to do it. Anya, I have one question for you around how your work will impact or be impacted by more the introduction of grid technology and on-grid power connection in the communities where you've worked as it comes in. What happens? I know this is an issue across Africa. I imagine it's happening even more quickly across Asia. Can you just talk us through how you're thinking of that dynamic?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Whoever asked it probably knows that this year especially, there has been a lot of changes in the grid connection in Nepal. The grid has become much more reliable literally overnight, and that has definitely affected the demand for Pico solar products, because customers are no longer that interested in like having a solar lantern as a reliable option during grid disconnectivity. And so that has made us just kind of refocus on these pay-as-you-go larger home power solutions. People are still looking for a more affordable way to climb up the energy ladder, as well as focusing on other energy inputs that are significant for women, especially clean cooking. And we are also looking to kind of round out our product offering, our product mix, with some women's feminine hygiene products and women's health products as well. We're really focused on distribution and creating sustainable distribution networks. And we believe that, if grid connectivity becomes 100% reliable in Nepal, that that's wonderful. And that means that we have definitely helped the country develop as a whole, and we help our entrepreneurs kind of refocus their businesses on productive uses of that energy.
Fantastic, thanks, Anya. I have one last question actually that I'd like to ask all of the panelists, along with your takeaway messages for the audience. One of the audience members has asked, she said, she or he had said, I'm very interested in how women as active participants in the value chain, more broadly, technicians, policymakers, etc., can help shape the energy access financing space in terms of women's access to finance and the wider economic empowerment. So if I could ask each of the panelists to just reflect on that question and reflect more broadly on your takeaway messages for all the participants today. That would be great. Starting Rebecca and Stephanie with you.
Sure, thanks so much. That's a really great question and really broad. I think I would hone in on a couple of quick things, and I'll pass it over to Stephanie as well. One thing I think is sort of from the investing side, we talked a bit about in our presentation about making the business case and continuing to make the business case. I think that is one really key thing. It sort of serves as the carrot. Once we can, as we continue to sort of prove that it's a profitable endeavor to improve kind of how women are being included in the sector and how that's related to accessing finance, I think that serves as a carrot for others who might not be initially completely on board from kind of the investing side of things. So that I think is one thing. The other thing I think is interesting to look at is just sort of the field of impact investing. And there are several kind of gender lens investors popping up out there, or smaller kind of family investors or foundations that are trying to understand what it means to invest with a gender lens and look at creating kind of due diligence or some points for due diligence within their own portfolios. And I think that's a kind of growing and interesting field to look at, that's also related to that creation of the business case and really understanding how to invest with a gender lens, what that means and what the benefits are. And so I think having kind of those gender lens investors and funders who are willing to kind of share information with a broader sector about what they're seeing, and sort of look at how the data that we're seeing from Fortune 500 companies about women in leadership and the impact that that has on business growth, and sort of look at translating some of those indicators or I guess stats that we're seeing at the kind of Fortune 500 level, and look at how to create data points around that in the SME sector, I think are a couple of important things. I'll stop there, maybe see if Stephanie wants to add anything before going to the other panelists.
No, just to reiterate what Rebecca said, I mean, I think the two biggest things that we've been talking a lot about lately on this topic are what she just mentioned, which are on the investor side and on connecting the trends that we're seeing regarding the business case at a high level with larger companies, connecting those trends to SMEs and particularly women-owned SMEs. So the more data and research that we can bring to the discussion, I think will help to build the business case. And if you can do that, then that will translate into a much wider change, because suddenly people who may not have been that interested in the gender aspect, if they're not that interested in the gender side or the gender argument for doing something, they will likely be interested in the business argument. So just having data on both sides of those both sides of that coin would be is really important, and something that I think can impact a lot of change at a wide level.
Absolutely, and that business case is evolving and strengthening day in and day out. From what I've seen, just from being involved in the various webinars and circles of conversation that have emerged over the last 4 or 5 years. So strengthening business case certainly makes the point. I'm going to pass over to Natalie and hopefully Abdul, if he's still on the line and if his connection's good enough. Before I do that, can I just remind all the participants that you can access further information from our panelists in that chat function where different documents related to the talks have been uploaded. And then also on the green platform, we'll have all the information available. So Natalie and Abdul, your final reflections and that reflection on the bigger picture context of women in the value chain, please.
Thank you. Well, what I would like to say is that in our case, what we've noticed is that when we build, support mechanism for women entrepreneurs, it's very important to make sure that we adapt to and we tailor it to the context where we're operating. In our specific case, for example, we had a business model that was kind of mirroring what we had done successfully in East Africa before, and we wanted to take it back to West Africa, thinking that is going to provide the same amount of result. And we realized that the context is completely different, and we had to rework the model to make sure that we tailor it and adapt it to the need of the women and the cultural barriers that you get in the specific country we're operating. So I think that is very something very important, to keep in mind. And then the other thing that I think we have noticed is that access to finance for women, yes, is an important thing. But sometimes it's also about looking where is access to finance necessary within the value chain. In some of the cases, we realized that it was about supporting the supplier to access finance, which by consequence would have helped the distribution chain, which were represented by women, much more. So, bringing working capital to the suppliers so that they could provide, products on credit to women was essential. And the other thing I think from our work in Finnegan that we've noticed is that creating evidence on the ground to show that women can play an important role in delivering access to energy has resulted in our case of programs and policy within Senegal, in particular the SE for All national document and action agenda, to integrate gender mainstreaming and a full section on empowering women to deliver access to energy, which was not the case before. So, both things together, are very important. If you want really to advocate for that, you need to create evidence on the ground.
Absolutely. And speaking to location specific, even community specific, moving from one community to another brings in differences in preferences and in approaches in cultural context. So very important to make that distinction and to be tailored in one's approach. Finally, Anya, would you like to reflect on this broader context as well and give us your final thoughts?
Sure. I think that in terms of the question, what's really important in terms of accessing women as customers is not only providing them financing so that they can purchase products, but also this direct marketing approach to them and identifying their pain points, and having a marketer be someone that understands and is sympathetic to these struggles, and really creating consumer value, them as valuable consumers, not just as beneficiaries that are needed to be included in the broader market or the broader scope.
A whole woman approach to things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, this brings our session nearly to a close. I would like to thank you all, to all of our panelists for their excellent overviews and very detailed work, and for all the hard work that goes day in and day out to what has created the kinds of stories and solutions that you've been able to share today. We've just gotten a window of an insight, and certainly your work is very important to us all globally, and we encourage you to continue it and scale it as radically and successfully as possible. We'd also like to thank USAID as the sponsor of this event and as the supporter of GACO and the entire program of work that we're implementing on renewable energy and gender perspectives on climate change more generally. Without your support, this would not be possible at all. Also, Maria, I'd like to recognize some very important people that have been behind the scene on this call and over the weeks in preparation of the call and overall over the long term in GACO. Maria Preble, who's been our technical assistant and director on this call, she's been there through and through, and this really wouldn't have been able to happen without her, and her colleague Jamie, who's sitting by her side. Thank you both. And Anya Rojas, who leads our GACO initiative, and unfortunately was not able to join us today, but is a real pillar of strength in the overall GECKO initiative. So thank you for all your support. I'd like to remind you that there is a video of the presentations and an audio recording of this webinar that will be made available online at the green platform with the website address that you see before you now. Thank you all very much for participating, and we hope that you'll be able to join us in future calls. Our next webinar will be on gender and energy infrastructure, looking at some of the more large-scale renewable energy infrastructure challenges that they pose for gender perspectives. Thank you very much, and have a good evening or rest of your day. Bye.